Imagine for a moment that everything we call normal today is actually a collective delusion, that the way we live, work, love, and entertain ourselves isn't proof of progress, but a clear sign of a society that's lost its way.
Would you feel if I told you the world around you isn't just fast-paced or stressful, but deeply sick? A mass psychosis, invisible, accepted, applauded, but still a psychosis. That's what we're talking about today. This silent illness that affects millions, not with fever or pain, but with emptiness, anxiety, and disconnection, and more importantly, how to escape it. Because yes, there is a way out. Picture this. You wake up, check your phone, drink some quick coffee, rush to work, pretend you're fine, smile at people you barely know, come home exhausted, numb yourself with content that doesn't feed your soul, sleep, repeat. This routine doesn't seem insane because everyone lives like this. But what if that's exactly the problem? As Jung once said, a perfectly adjusted person in a profoundly sick society is no measure of health. What we call normal might be the clearest symptom of a collective mental collapse. Anxiety has become a lifestyle. Depression is treated with pills that make you function, not heal. Sadness is no longer a call to listen, it's a flaw to be fixed. Restlessness is no longer an invitation to self-awareness, it's an inconvenience to be silenced. Look around. How many people do you know who are truly well, who feel their lives have purpose, direction, meaning? Most people, if they're honest, are just surviving, not living, just going through the motions. We've built a system where productivity matters more than presence, where being busy is more valuable than being at peace, where you're expected to keep smiling even when every part of you is screaming for help. And that's why so many people feel like failures for being tired, sad, or confused, because we've mistaken suffering for weakness, when often suffering is a scream of clarity in a world that's gone mad. They taught us we're evolving. More tech, more comfort, more access. But somewhere along the race, we lost consciousness. We traded connection for convenience, depth for speed, wisdom for opinion. The world has never been more connected and never more fragmented. The devices meant to bring us together have isolated us in digital bubbles. Social media promised belonging, but often delivered only comparison, envy, and loneliness. Aldous Huxley predicted this with terrifying precision in Brave New World. He didn't fear a future of pain and oppression, but one of excess pleasure. A world controlled not through fear, but through endless entertainment. A world where people learn to love their servitude. We're living that dystopia voluntarily, doped up on dopamine from infinite scrolling. Our eyes shine at screens, but dim in real life. We laugh at memes, but forget how to look into someone's eyes. We're digitally connected and spiritually sedated. So the question is, where were we rushing to exactly? What was the destination? If you stop to look, you'll realize that what we call progress is leading us toward more alienation, not more freedom, toward more distraction, not more presence. We're building a highly efficient civilization with a hollow soul. Fear is a powerful tool, and whoever controls fear controls behavior. We live in a state of constant alert. Fear of the future, fear of judgment, fear of failure, fear of falling behind, fear of being wrong, fear of not fitting in. The media, institutions, and power systems know this and exploit it mercilessly. Every headline, every alert, every sensationalist statistic feeds this sick psyche, and when we're afraid, we don't question, we just obey. There is no clarity in a state of panic. That's why keeping people anxious is strategic. People in constant fear don't create, don't challenge, don't reflect. They just follow orders. They just consume. Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist Chris Hedges once said, "A traumatized population is easy to control." And maybe that's exactly where we are, numbed by shocks, unable to see that the greatest threat to our freedom is the fear we've been conditioned to carry every day. Notice how fear-based language has become normal. Don't miss this. How much longer can we take it? Prepare for the worst. This flood of panic isn't a coincidence, it's a strategy. And once you understand it, you begin to reclaim your power, because freedom starts the moment you stop reacting to fear and start acting with awareness. We've never been so busy, so distracted, so tired, and yet so empty. Distraction has become a permanent state of existence. We turn our attention away from what really matters and toward whatever numbs us the fastest. We are a generation that can no longer bear silence, that needs noise to feel alive, that needs to be online to not feel forgotten. And behind that, there's an uncomfortable truth. Maybe we're not running from the world. Maybe we're running from ourselves. Netflix, TikTok, memes, endless scrolling, rivers of dopamine keeping us away from pain, but also from truth. Because when you stop, the silence speaks. And what it says can be scary. It speaks of that decision you've avoided, that relationship that no longer makes sense, that emptiness no entertainment can fill. Stanford University studies show how our brains have been conditioned to seek instant gratification, how we've lost the ability for deep focus, true presence, simply being. And with that, we've lost our capacity for introspection. Distraction isn't the problem itself, but addiction to it is, because it keeps us from growing, from feeling, from changing. We're always too busy to listen to our pain, and that's why it doesn't leave. It just changes form. It becomes anxiety, irritability, compulsion. Freedom begins when you choose to disconnect from distraction and reconnect with what's inside you, even if it hurts. Because pain is often the voice of truth. We were made to belong, to share, to recognize ourselves in each other's gaze. But we live in a time where the we has dissolved into a sea of me, where community became a product, friendship became networking, bonding became an algorithm. We're surrounded by people and still feel alone. We greet each other with emojis but avoid eye contact. We speak to thousands but rarely feel heard. And deep down, we miss something we no longer know how to name. Real presence. Unrushed listening. A touch without expectation. Hyper-individualism sold us the idea of absolute independence. But we forgot. Autonomy is not the opposite of community. It's within authentic connection that we become whole, that we heal, that we recognize ourselves. Michel de Montaigne once said that true friendship asks for nothing, demands nothing, it simply is. In times of appearances, that has become rare, because we've learned to perform, not to be, to please, not to feel. The death of community isn't just social, it's existential. When we lose the we lose part of ourselves. And maybe one of the most powerful forms of healing begins with a simple gesture. Listening without judgment, being present for real. We live in showcases, not just on Instagram, but in every social interaction. The culture of positivity has become a new form of repression. Today, you can't just be, you have to perform happiness. You have to look okay, always. But the truth is, Behind many smiles, there's pain, exhaustion, a deep fatigue from carrying an image, and that makes us sick. Because the more you distance yourself from who you are, the further you are from peace. Sadness has become taboo. Vulnerability, weakness, suffering, shame, but there is nothing more human than feeling lost, confused, or broken. Pretending to be invulnerable is a burden far too heavy to carry. Philosopher Byung-Chul Han warns us, we live in a performance society where each person becomes their own executioner. And when we can't meet the ideal, we blame ourselves. We feel broken, not enough, a failure. But that maybe the problem isn't within us, maybe it's in the sick expectations we've been taught. The collective lie that being human means being fine all the time. Maybe it's time to stop pretending, to accept that it's okay to not be okay, because healing begins in that recognition. And freedom returns when we dare to be real. The idea of control is seductive. It gives us the illusion of safety, predictability, of thinking that if we do everything right, nothing will go wrong. But living, trying to control everything, is like trying to hold back the tide with your hands. We spend our lives trying to control how we're seen, what people think of us, what we feel, the future, the past, the present. And what does that constant need for control bring? Anxiety, frustration, burnout. Michel de Montaigne, after a near-death accident, understood something most of us still resist. Control is a fantasy, he said. My life has been full of terrible misfortunes, most of which never happened. How many times have you been trapped in scenarios that never came true? Sleepless nights over worries that vanish the next day? Attempts to control what, by nature, is uncertain. The world is fluid, emotions change, people are unpredictable. The more we try to grasp, the more slips through. What's hard to accept but freeing to live is this. Life is not about control, it's about presence. Peace doesn't come from mastering everything around you. It comes from stopping the fight against what is. It begins the moment you let go and choose to trust. Trust that you'll know how to handle things even if you can't predict them, that you can be whole even in the middle of chaos. At some point, something inside starts to stir. You don't know exactly what it is, but it feels like the reality around you stops making sense. That's the beginning of an awakening. Not the mystical or romantic kind, but a subtle unease. A crack in the narrative you've always been told. Maybe you start questioning why you're always so tired, why you work so much to buy things you don't even use, why you chase likes like they were hugs, why you feel late for life even when you're up to date with everything. That doubt, uncomfortable as it is a sign of clarity. It's your consciousness trying to break the bubble. And it begins small. A question here, a discomfort there. But if you have the courage to listen, it leads you inward. Søren Kierkegaard once said, "The door to happiness opens inward." And it's exactly when we look inside that we begin to see clearly. We realize we've been living by rules we never chose, playing a game we never agreed to. Waking up is uncomfortable, but it's also the first step toward freedom. And the question is, do you have the courage to question what you've always believed? Modern life has taken us far from the simple, from the natural, from the present. We try to fill the void with everything: consumption, success, applause, information. But maybe the answer lies in the opposite, in less. The essential isn't aesthetic minimalism. It's alignment between what you feel and how you live. It's sitting in silence and listening to your thoughts without fear. It's walking without a destination, just to walk. It's having conversations with presence, loving with vulnerability, working with purpose. The Stoics spoke of this long ago. True freedom lies in needing less, in wanting less, in accepting what is instead of chasing what never comes. Returning to the essential isn't giving up. It's reconnection with nature, with your body, with others, with yourself. And in that return, life slows down. Not because it gets easier, but because you stop resisting. When you choose the essential, everything excessive begins to lose its shine. And you realize that peace was always there, just buried beneath the noise of the world. So we arrive at the most important point of this entire reflection. Now what? How do we escape the illusion? How do we break free from this silent psychosis? The first answer might sound simple, but it's profound. Start with yourself. Don't wait for the world to change. Change the way you move through it. Disconnect from distraction. Set aside time without screens, without news, without noise. Make space for silence to speak. It has a lot to say. Question your fears.
Ask where they came from. Who taught you to be so afraid? Who convinced you that you have to be accepted all the time, that you have something to prove? Reclaim control over your own mind, over what you consume, over who you connect with.
Over what you tolerate. Carl Jung said, "Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakens." And maybe the greatest revolution you can make is exactly that, to return inward, to reconnect with your essence, with what's real, with what's simple, with what's yours. Mass psychosis begins when everyone believes the same lie, but clarity begins when one person chooses to live the truth. Let it be you.